Hello, and we want to just welcome you really quick to another relationship ministry seminar. Listen, we're not going to waste any time today. We do have our three good brothers back, Brother Joseph, Brother Havis, Pastor Troy, and we're just going to come right out and we're just going to get right into our discussion today. If you've joined us online, why don't you just type in the comment box where you're from, where you're joining us from, and then by all means, if you have any questions whatsoever for our panelists, just go on and type them in the question box. All we're doing is rapid questions today. They're backed by popular demand. I'm going to just give you an opportunity. We'll start with you, Havis. We'll come down to Pastor Troy and then to Joseph to just greet the folk and let everyone know just something about why it's important for us to have this conversation tonight.
Hey, good afternoon. Havis Bardouille here with Bardouille Financial Services. It's an honor to be with my fellow panelists. The reason why you should be tuning in today is simply this. Family and finances is very important. If you don't have it, guess what? It's going to break down. Your family will break down. Your finances will break down. So what I do is I help families create generational wealth. And also, one of the most important things is that I can be licensed in any state in the union. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Havis.
Having us back on. My name is Troy Solomon Levy. I am a pastor in Maryland and also the founder of Levy Legacy Coaching, where we help families, especially families of color, develop a positive legacy of financial stewardship. So extremely important, especially for families of color.
Awesome. Joe Nyamwange, I work for Microsoft, but also run my own foundation, the Nyamwange Foundation. And finance is just one of those things that I find very passionate for me, especially in our community, people of color. if we're going to have, true freedom, economic and financial freedom is important. So it's the reason why I'm on here. It's the reason why I love talking about it, because I do think it's a pillar in our community, an important topic.
Gotcha. So once again, I'm David Defoe. I'm just the Relationship Ministries Director. I'm facilitating this conversation, but these guys, they're the experts. I'm here to learn from them and glean all that I can from them. But we're just going to take a few questions. And one of the first questions that we had that we didn't get to last time is if you all could give us some advice as to how do we make our families more financially independent. We see what's going on in the world. We see the troubles. We see COVID-19. We see what's going on, the unrest in the United States right now. How is it that we can make our families more financially independent?
Well, one of the first things I always tell individuals is one of the cheapest ways I know to create financial independence is using your health as equity to create generational wealth. Most of the times, if I know what I knew when I was younger, I'd be in a different position. But you're not too old. One of the things I think one of the big mistakes that people make is that they think they have to have $1 million to start. No, it starts with whatever you have. It doesn't matter. So I believe that the best way to create generational wealth and the cheapest way is investing in yourself, because if you have health, you can leverage that and let your health use it as equity to create generational wealth.
I would second that. Definitely important. But I think, coming at it from another perspective, it's the fact that our children now need to be learning things about finances in order for the next generation to learn. So, teaching them how to work. And of course, they may not go to, a restaurant and start washing dishes. There are always age appropriate things, but teaching them the value of work, and that in turn teaches them the value of the dollar, starting with chores. It can be very, very simple in that sense. And then teaching them just very simple budget categories helps kids to learn how to manage their money at an early age.
Yeah, I think for me, if we're going to be financially independent, I think we have to stop being financially dependent on other things, right? If you look at most people, they're living way beyond their means, whether it's credit card spending or borrowing a whole bunch of money. What we're doing is we're sinking our lives into more and more debt, which is to be in financial slavery. So I think the challenge for us is, if we're going to be financially independent, we have to free ourselves from debt and start investing in our money and create flows that can give us financial freedom and passive income.
Sure. When you say passive income, like, what do you mean? Just define what passive income is.
Yeah. So in other words, you're investing in assets or items that's going to pay you, right, over a given period of time. So, one of the popular ones is real estate, right? So if you own a rental property, you'll be receiving money over a period of time, right? So you're not over dependent on, one source of income, a job to be able to provide. You're putting your money in assets that's going to pay you over time.
Gotcha. Okay. So what are some of the practical things that I can do right now to secure my economic future? What are the things I can do practically right now, today, instantaneously?
Man,
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, yeah, I would say definitely. It depends really on the situation, but let's say the scenarios: you have a job during this quarantine time, and making sure that you have enough saved, because the reality is no one really saw this coming. We can't predict when emergencies happen, but we do know that they will happen at some point in time. It may not be as major as this. But the thing about emergencies, if you don't have savings stacked up for times like this, then, the thing that you're going to do is to go into debt. And when you're going into debt, you're going in the wrong direction. You're going into the red. So, that's first and foremost for me. Gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, Havis.
Yes, I'll tell you right now, I don't think any of us have been through a pandemic before. And a lot of people were looking for a stimulus, right? They kept checking their bank accounts and checking the mailbox every day. Well, you could have created your own stimulus. How? By having life insurance. And most people don't even realize, I'm going to give you 4 names. All right. Walt Disney, JCPenney, Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's, and Doris Christopher, who started the Pamper Chip. All of them started their empire with using that, using life insurance, cash value in order to create wealth. And their wealth that they have now can be created, can be spent for generations. So the important thing is simply this: you don't need to have a lot of money to start. But the funny thing is this: if you had something placed in place right now, you could have borrowed it from yourself. Use yourself as your own bank. And I know Joe's going to say something else, and that's called a winning for Joe. But the important thing is this: make sure you have something in place. And most people refuse to do that because they're depending on others, and that's not good.
Now, Havis, and we're going to come back. We're going to come back to this question, right? But Havis, I noticed that last time you mentioned insurance being the key to, in your opinion, to building the key to legacy, and we didn't really get into it. So tell people a little bit more about what it is that you're talking about, and then what are some of the pitfalls that they should look out for to prevent themselves from predatory practices, even. So just spend a little time talking to us about life insurance. We'll deal with it now, so we don't have to put it off till later. But I know we didn't really deal with it, or we may not have given you enough time to talk about it last time. But just give us a little snapshot so that people listening can know what it is that you're talking about.
All four of us right now are sitting in our homes, and every house has a foundation. So your foundation has to be insurance. Insurance gives you guarantees. Insurance is not just insurance, it's assurance. For example, if someone called me last night, someone texted me on Sabbath, and I told them I'll call them after sunset. Well, the person fell and they had all these injuries. Right now, what's going to pay them is insurance, because they have long-term care. They can't do like 4 of the activities of daily living. In another sense, what most people don't realize about insurance is simply this: insurance is not money you live for people when you die. You can have living benefits you can access while you're alive. For example, if you have health, and some people may have challenging health, and if you have that, there's other things we can talk about. But the simple thing, you can get $1 million policy. You're like, what? Can I afford that? Well, it depends. You can do a term and then convert it into an IUL, which is an index universal life, or you can into a whole life. The point I'm trying to make here is that if you don't have a foundation, when things happen to you, you won't be able to survive, because who's going to pay you, especially if you don't have vacation time on your job? What are you going to access if you don't have any savings? I think there's a statistic that says the average American does not have $400 in their bank account if they have an emergency. So my point is, have an IUL, and then you can access that cash value. If you live too long, if you become ill, and if you die, your family gets a lot of money tax-free.
So what we'll do is, Havis, we'll put your contact information in case anybody wants to hear more about that. So that during this discussion, we'll talk about other practical things that individuals can do. Joseph, I didn't mean to cut you off, but man, anything to contribute about some practical things that we can do right now to secure our economic future.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot that was said. So let me take it back to the point that you mentioned, right? How do we secure a future? It's not hard, and I don't want to overcomplicate it for people, right? Either we're playing offense or defense, right? If you're borrowing money and you're paying back interest at a high rate, then you're not going to set yourself up well. The goal is reduce the leverage that other banks have. So in other words, reduce the amount of debt that you have and invest money. You save money. I don't want to use the word save. Invest your money, right, to something that's going to be able to grow compoundedly, right? So either you're growing your wealth and you're protecting your wealth, right? And that's how, at least for me, how I've seen it. It's how we do it. It's how we operate within our family. I think the more we complicate it for our viewers, people get lost. Finances is scary, right? It's weird. It's a tough topic. So I think it's if we put it at its simplest form, reduce the amount of money that you're borrowing, save and invest more of your money, right? So that you can have a financial legacy and put it in assets that are going to give you a higher rate of return. If we can create multiple streams of income, that's how we're going to stabilize our families. It's how we're going to build generational wealth. And if I do this right for my kids, and I do this for my kids' kids, the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. If you start doing that, we're going to lift a whole generation of people up. And I think that's why I don't want us to lose sight of what's important.
Okay. Anything else to sort of share on that from anyone?
Yeah, before you go, Doc, let me just jump in real quick and say this. I like what Joseph just said about, leaving an inheritance for your children's children. I think there was a song by Billie Holiday that said something like, "Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child who has his own." You look at this stack right here. This is 4 cases that I'm working on, and I'll tell you, Dr. Defoe and Dr. Levy. One of them belongs to one of your colleagues, who now is in Texas. The important thing about this, Joseph talked about debt. Well, what if you can get out of debt in 9 years or less without spending any additional income and creating generational wealth? The only way I know how to do that is using that concept of the 4 people I just talked about earlier. Most people don't understand those concepts. So one of your colleagues, Docs, he was going to be in debt for about, and the family was going to be in debt about for 23 years. We created a plan for them. I just closed it on Thursday, and they'll be out of debt in 6.8 years, totally out of debt, and have cash value that they can access. And God forbid something happens to the insured, there's millions of dollars because they have a young child. You can't do that with stocks, because you buy a share of Microsoft. A share is only a share. It may go up and down. You may lose value. You may gain value. I'm not opposed, Joseph. I'm not opposed to investing in stocks and bonds. What I'm trying to tell people is you can be debt-free in 9 years or less without spending any additional income and using insurance to do that. Can it work? I just did it for a past, and I have 4 more cases right here I'm working on. And that's the point I want to make here, that people understand there is a way. Well, at the end of the show, I'll tell you how to contact me if you're interested, if you're in debt. We'll show you how to create your own generational wealth, tax-free.
Gotcha. So I hear you mention debt, right? So let's talk about it. What should a household budget look like for households that are in debt, households that may want to invest, and households that may be interested right now in securing their future? So those 3 categories. If I want to budget, how do I budget if I'm completely in debt, completely underwater? How do I budget if I want to make some investment? And how do I budget if I want to secure my future?
Dr. Defoe, I would say that the best way to get on financial footing is to get out of debt as quickly as possible. That's something that, and it's not just pie in the sky, that's something that my wife and I have done. And doing that a few years ago is what has set us up for a really, really great future. I mean, just the cash flow that we're able to free up to invest in ourselves. My wife is going back to school in the fall. And other financial things that we've been freed up to do. To me, that is just the number one thing. So I would say if you have any consumer debt, meaning anything besides your home, that you would make that the priority. I would suggest that, and I understand greatly how important investing is for the future, like retirement and whatnot. My wife and I, we do that. We have that, but the first and foremost thing is to get out of debt. And when people do that, they'd be so surprised how much they're freed up to do other financial things. To me, that is one of the most foundational things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Joseph, anything to share with that? And then.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's funny. I talk to a lot of people about this, and we lose sight of what a real need versus a want is, right? So I think if you really want to attack that, it's a behavior issue, right? So you got to look at things that are needs and be honest with yourself. If we need this, that's fine. And I categorize needs as you have the place to live, you have food to eat, and you can transport yourself. If you can do those 3 things, then you're fine. Outside of that, a lot of things are luxury, right? You don't need to go to a restaurant, right? And you don't need to continue investing in, extra piano lessons or whatever the case is. And so I think the important thing is, to Troy's point, is, or Dr. Levy, is like, all right, look, figure out how we're going to prioritize debt, knock that out, and that's how you budget it. You look at your income that's coming in and your expenses, take care of your expenses, your immediate expenses, but going after knocking down some of those debts. That's how you budget for the person who's who's swarming in consumer debt.
Hey, Doc, before you continue real quickly, what people have to realize is that if you don't know where your money is going, you're in trouble. You need to document it. I say buy everything using your debit card. If you don't know how to do a budget, contact me after. We'll tell you how to do it. But the important thing is if you can track, if I look at your statement, I can tell you how you live in. Your bank statement, I can tell you how you live in. You said debt, invest, and secure. The first thing is you got to track it. You got to put it down. And the funny thing is that most people, what they do, they don't transfer it. You have to transfer that debt into wealth. And the only way I know how to do that, because if you're on a fixed budget and you're earning X or Y or Z, there's a lot of people who they might have a credit card, for example, or a consumer loan. And I know the minimum payment may be $50 and they're paying $150 and they have like a $10,000 credit. I'm like, no, don't do that. Let me show you. Pay the minimum, and I can show you how you can get out of debt, pay it off, and at the end of it, Doc, at the end of paying it off, you have wealth. But if you do it the other ways, making double payments of mortgages, I frown against that. I frown because check this out. If you have a mortgage about $300,000, but you have $400,000 saved, you're not in debt. You know why you're not in debt? Because you can pay off that mortgage anytime. But if you have a mortgage of $300,000 and you got $52.25 in the bank, you're in debt. And I'm saying to you, I can teach anyone how to get out of debt and create generational wealth.
But what's the pathway to do it if they don't want to go insurance route? Like, so giving people more than one option.
Yeah,
I would actually strongly disagree with Havis on that point because debt isn't just about personal finance in general, but especially debt isn't just about numbers. It's not just about mathematics. This is a psychological thing. And I know for myself, I can only speak for myself and my family, and even the clients that I have that I've helped to get out of debt. Man, when you're out of debt psychologically, man, you are free. And that is not something that you could put a number on. That's not a mathematical concept. So it's more than just numbers, Havis. That this is psychological, man. And I would strongly suggest that you look at it from a holistic point of view.
I think the doc misunderstood my point. What I was trying to say, Dr. Levy, is simply this. I was trying to say, if you owe $5,000 to someone and you're in debt $5,000, but you have $25,000, you're not in debt because you have $25,000. But if I owe you $5,000 and all I got in my pocket is $250, I am in debt. I am not saying to you, Doc, that people should not use non-traditional ways. I'm not opposed to mutual funds and stocks and bonds. I'm not opposed to it at all. I just tell people there's a different way. The way I'm talking about is a non-traditional way. And it's a new concept to people. So I have to agree with Joseph there that if someone wants to go that route, you can go that route. I'm not opposed to that. What I'm saying to you is that if you owe and you have it, you don't owe. If you owe and you don't have it, you owe. And that's the point I'm trying to make. You're transferring the debt. Yeah. Transfer. That's what
I follow what you're saying. But I hear you too. I still disagree on this merit. If somebody owes me $5,000, they owe me $5,000. Whether they have $50 or whether they have $100, they still owe me, right? So the question then becomes: is it a matter of do you have the capacity to pay off your debt versus do you not have the capacity to pay off your debt, right? Which I think those are different things. But I think the question you asked, Defoe, is what are the streams to kind of build wealth? And look, I'm all for eliminating debt, but that's only part of the puzzle. If I told you, if you think about, look at, we use the term of psychologically free, right? And freedom. If you look at back when we were emancipated, right? And we actually, Black people were no longer slaves. It wasn't just about being free. It was around how can I be wealthy? How can I continue to do other things that I want to do? Because what's going to happen is if you're free and still struggling, you're going to go back to the master's house because you're going to say, you know what, maybe it was better over here. So I think when we start talking about psychological freedom, it's not just eliminating debt. That's so we can go on the offense. How do we now put ourselves in a situation where we're building generational wealth? And for me, the way I've seen it, and many other people do it, you have entrepreneurs want to create a business, They want to make a lot of money, with a new product, a new app. That's great. But when you invest your money, and I'm a big fan of the market, right? If you invest your money in the market space, I also believe in real estate. If you invest in real estate, if you're putting money in assets that's going to generate generational wealth, or it's going to generate income, it's a different life, guys. If you're getting $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month without getting a W-2 form, or without going to work, it's a different way of giving. It's a different way of operating. And I think that's how you do it. And this is not like something I've made up or anyone here has made up. People have done this blueprint for years. There are many people who are successful and wealthy by investing in the market space, or investing in real estate or entrepreneurship. Even if you came to me and said, Joe, look, I'm not going to be a high earner, you could still retire with dignity, with multimillionaire. You could still protect your family with insurance. You could still do a lot of things. But I do think it's a multifaceted approach that we all you have to look at and break it down and get help, right? Troy, you guys are good coaches. People need coaching through this, but that's what we have in this conversation. The point is that there's ways to get there, right? It's get out of debt first, because credit cards are eating your money away. But now let's put our money in assets that are going to grow our money. If we can do that, we're playing defense and we're playing offense, and we're doing well on both sides. That's how we're going to make money for us and our families in the future.
Gotcha.
Hey, Doc, let me ask Joe a question real quickly. Hey, Joe, if you get out of debt, but then you don't have any assets, you didn't create any wealth. I mean, I agree. That's a good thing, but how is that benefiting you? I keep saying over and over, I am not opposed to markets. I was a FINRA rep for many years, wholesaling variable annuities and mutual funds and so forth. But the point is, I'm saying, if someone told me you can get out of debt in 4 years or 3 years and also have wealth, or I can get out of debt in 3 or 4 years and have nothing, I'm going with the one where I have guarantees. And the funny thing about the market is simply this. I keep telling people, we use a term in my business where zero is the hero. What that means is you can participate in the gains of the market without being in the market. And again, if you're younger, or if you're some people might be older. I mean, institutional investing is great. You have the Warren Buffetts, you have the Josephs, you have all the people who are into that. I'm not opposed to that. And what I'm trying to teach people, make people understand, because this concept is so new, the last few years, people don't understand. It's been around for a long time, but the average person, they just know, go to a bank, put your money in a bank. And listen, I saw someone in New Jersey last Wednesday via Zoom. Yeah. They have $168,000 in a savings account. As God is my witness, the interest rate is 0.08%.
It's not good. It's not good.
No.
So I have to educate that person and create wealth for them. That's all I'm saying.
So let me answer your question, because you directed it to me. So
I'll take that. If I'll take that and leave that in my bank account. That's why I'm broke. So that's why I'm listening to y'all. I'm broke. So.
Here's the thing. Let me make this clear. Like, getting out of debt is part of the thing, right? That's what I said. Like, it's one thing not to be a slave anymore, but you do have to invest in assets. So I'm all for it. The Bible talked about this. You guys remember the parable with the talent, right? This one had one talent. All the talent saved money, by the way, right? 3 of them invested, and 1 of them put it in a savings account. And if you look at the master said you were, when I say savings account, he put it underground, which means it wasn't.
I know what you mean. Right.
But he pretty much called them dumb. You could at least put it in something that would give me some kind of interest. So the point is, I'm all for investing. I just know that generational wealth, we call it generational, not instant wealth, because I don't believe in instant wealth. But if we're going to do generational wealth, we have to make sure the building blocks are correct. And I don't want to invest in or put money in things that are extracting or eating away from my wealth, right? High interest rates, payday loans, all these other good things. I'm going to put things that's going to build my wealth and assets. And that's what the market does. That's what real estate does. That's what opening business does. Like you creating an opportunity to do it. I just look at certain things that I know that why would I put my money here? I look at the track record, and that's how I built from my own personal wealth. It's through ways that are tried, that have worked, and over years, not in a moment of time, but over years, have proven to be very successful.
Gotcha. All right. So, Troy, there was one thing that you talked about last time. You talked about the three different, or maybe it was you, Joseph. One of you all talked about the three different categories that you have for your children, right? I've heard from many people, we're talking about family and finances. I've heard from many people, how do I develop a financial literacy program for my child or my children? Or let me know if you know of any financial literacy programs, or how should I start? One way to break generational curses is with generational information. How do I develop financial literacy for my children?
Absolutely.
You start with that, man.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, our kids, they're going to do more of what's caught than what is taught, right? So we can tell our kids till we're blue in the face, hey, you need to save, or hey, you need to spend money wisely. But unless they see us, putting something away in savings or spending money wisely, or avoiding debt, all those kinds of things, then they're going to fall right into those same habits. So that's first and foremost. We ourselves have to have correct financial habits. But secondly, we can be intentional as parents, and it takes some age-appropriate things. And I think I mentioned this earlier in the broadcast, that my kids. Let's say my oldest son is 10. I have a 10-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old, or 4. One I forgot what it is. That last one is killing me. Anyways, for all of them, I have different things that I have them do around the home to make sure that they are working. I don't give allowance at all. You have to work for everything that you get. And so they and it doesn't mean that everything that they do around the house that they get money for is not like that, but we do have certain things just so that we can train them as to how to work to get their money. We train them with spending. There's some things that they can spend their money on. There are other things that they cannot, because it just isn't as wise of a spend. And then in terms of budgeting, very, very simple. That the simple budget that my wife and I do for them is not intricate. They don't buy groceries or anything like that. Just 3 simple things that they do. Number 1, they save. Number 2, they have put money away for spending. And number 3, they put money away for giving. They bring their little dollars to church. They give it in Sabbath school or kids' church, or even a regular church as well, just so that they can exercise those giving muscles. So those are the 3 things. It's not complicated. When they get older, we'll complicate it a little more when their spending gets more complicated, but that's about it. And I highly recommend that for all parents to do for their children.
I think someone asked a great question. I think it was Elder Winston Lucum from Etfs in Richmond, Virginia. The question he asked is, how do we build generational wealth if our children aren't interested? And that's an excellent question, as we're discussing right now. I'll just give him a quick answer. I have a client who's a clinician in Louisiana who has a 4-year-old daughter. And basically what we did was we created generational wealth. The 4-year-old is not interested. What does the 4-year-old know? That 4-year-old will retire as a millionaire. Listen, getting an income tax-free, by the way, of about $170,000 a year tax-free, not including a 401k if they have one, a pension if they have one, or whatever else they did, with a simple concept that we use through insurance. And I keep going back because that's what I do. I no longer do the other stuff. What I'm trying to say here, the simple answer to this question is, you can use your health as equity. And most people, if you're young, you have health. Most people, as you get older, it becomes a little challenging. But the thing is, you can do it. Your child don't have to want to do it. You got to do it for them. And I like what Troy said, everything they get, they earn. What Dr. Levy said, everything they get that they earn. But then you start doing for them prior to them getting to that age, and then you keep showing them. So after they graduate from college, that kid will be able to buy a car cash free, will be able to put a down payment on a house and still have funds and still have compounding interest. And if God forbid of an untimely death, by the time they're 65 years old, there'll be millions of dollars in death benefits. And we're not saying that you should not do the other things. I'm saying is the only way that I know, the cheapest way that I know to create that kind of wealth, generational wealth, using a small amount of money that has no risk, and I'm not opposed to risk, but no risk, is using that base of insurance.
But does that help children with financial literacy? So we're going back to how do we teach our children to manage finances? So if I give my children all that money, that doesn't mean they're going to then keep it.
Correct.
Well, Bill Gates, I think, or someone like that said they're only giving their kid like 10 million. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish my dad gave me 10 million. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Joseph.
This is the thing. We don't talk about it. That's what it comes down to, Defoe. Like, it's not ingrained. Think, especially people of color. Where do we spend a lot of our time, right? Growing up. It's in our house. We're learning a lot of stuff at church, in our school. In those three areas, nobody's talking about money, right? So you can't expect me now, all of a sudden, 21 years old, to be a guru or understand or like or appreciate money. So it starts at a young age. And I loved how, Troy talked about, like, you start teaching them this idea of earning, right? Okay, well, and then you're teaching them sacrifice. Well, I can't get anything I want. I have to be able to give up something, right? And then you teach them life skills. But even with all that, that's abstract. There has to come a point in time where you are talking about dollars. You are talking about money. And this is what I learned about children. Like, they're much smarter than we think. So, like, don't think, oh, they're too young. Oh, wait till they're teenagers. No, you could tell a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old about a dollar. You could tell them and correlate it to their toys and correlate it to stuff. So there's tons of programs out there, games, books on how to do it. But listen, if we push the needle on all three facets, Defoe, meaning we're pushing the needles in school, we're pushing the needles at church, we're pushing the needles at home. By the time they grow up, we're going to start thinking economically. We're going to start thinking liberated. We're going to start thinking freedom. And that's what's going to give us the leverage we need to be effective, regardless of what happens in society.
And I'll just add this. You better believe that in other cultures besides Black culture, mainly white cultures, man, they talk about these things. I can't say about school, but I would guess that they would. But at home and at church, they don't avoid it. And I think many times, we have this negative culture around finances that this is a secular subject in Black churches that, is not really part of God's plan, except for, of course, we talk about tithe and offering or whatever. But stewardship is so much more than just that 10% or plus whatever you get for offering. Stewardship is what you do with 100% of your money. And in order to be a good steward, it's got to be more than just, hey, I return tithe and offering. It's I do well with 100% everything that God has given me.
Correct.
And listen, Doc, before you go real quickly here, financial literacy is not taught in schools, and a lot of homes it's not taught, especially in a lot of African American homes. So my thing is simply this, get someone or an advisor or someone who can teach you so that you can teach yourself or teach your children. Because in middle school and high school and college, you didn't learn those things. So how do you get it? You have to trust someone who can teach you these concepts so that you can access it and do it yourself. The funny thing about anything, you can learn anything you want to learn, even budgeting, how to finance, everything. But the important thing is this: you have to have someone that you trust. There have to be some level of trust, because a lot of times you may have an advisor who's not, they're concerned about their own financial well-being and not the clients. That's why I always tell clients, I look for what's best for them. I put that in charge. And the first thing I say is, maybe something I keep thinking about it. Maybe I should start at the school here at Etfs. Go in there and say, hey, I would like to register, because I've already passed the background check for Allegheny East, right? I'd like to register to teach kids financial concepts. Maybe have them start a little credit union, and then that way, as they get older, those concepts will work. Because Troy said the last time, Dr. Levy said that, his children, nothing is earned. And he teaches them, if you got $1, you got to put some for tithe. It's the same concept. You got to put something aside It doesn't matter if you're making 30,000 or 3 million. You have 3 million, you're making 3 million problems. You have 30,000 problems. The important thing is literacy, understanding it, knowing it, and having someone who can teach you how to just continue to maintain and do it right. That's all I say.
I'll add one more thing to transition to Poe is it's while these things are important, at the end of the day, you also got to be living right yourself. Like, listen, kids ain't listening to you if you over here squandering money, trying to floss and trying to do all this other funny stuff. So I think it's important that we live by example. And a lot of other cultures, yeah, they talk about money, but best to believe they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're doing stuff. So I think that's just an important factor as well.
Yeah. So one thing I don't know is I don't know much about finances. Okay. All I know is if you ask me for money, I ain't gonna give it to you. But I do know something about psychology and the way the mind works. And I know for some of us, we're stuck where we are because of our mindset, how we view money. And for many of us, we need to change or alter how we view it in order for us to then be able to make it work for us. So what are some of the adjustments that you all had to make in your personal life, not business life now, but personal life, that you had to adjust as it relates to money in order for you to put yourself on a better footing and your family on a better footing?
Yeah. Great question. If y'all don't mind, I'll tackle this. So a couple years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, so my wife and I, we got out of debt. It took us about 2 years or so, and we had, I think at that point, maybe about 60, almost 70,000. So, one thing, Dr. Defoe, Havis, and Joseph, that we had to adjust, and the Bible talks about this, it's the C word that the Bible talks about over and over, and the word is contentment. We had to be satisfied with just taking care of our needs, right? We had to be satisfied with not buying the pairs of shoes for my wife or getting, her nails done all the time. And for myself, I like to look good at church, buying suits and all this kind of stuff. There literally for 2 years, I went without buying not one article of clothing, right? Matter of fact, let me take that back. I bought a tie. I went out of town to do a wedding in Nashville. I forgot my tie, brought my suit, shirt and everything. Went out to the mall, got a tie just so I could do this wedding. You best believe when I got back to New Jersey, where I was living at the time, I returned that mug just because
That's
I had
cool, Pastor.
And I had to learn, to be content with having nothing until that goal was reached. So contentment is huge, man. And the Bible talks a lot about that, especially when it comes to money.
Yeah, this is the thing. My story is a little bit different. I too, just for me, I had to get out a lot of debt as well. I had about $90,000 in debt, which, but thank God I'm debt free today, so I don't have that burden anymore. But my biggest thing, believe it or not, is I always assumed that if you were wealthy, you were unholy, and therefore was like, it was nothing to aspire to growing up. It was like, all right, well, I need to be a middle class guy, because if you have too much, you're greedy, you're probably stealing, you're doing something corrupt. And there was a psychological break that I had to kind of go through. And this took a lot of prayer. And it's trivial now when you look back. But God had to tell me, like, no, I want you to have life more abundantly. And that wasn't just like wait till heaven and wait till glory, that it wasn't unholy to be wealthy. As a matter of fact, God was telling me, actually, I can do more with you, Joseph, if you have more money. So let me empower you. So I think that's something I had to like personally kind of, go through and learn. I started doing more research and I started studying. Actually, Job was wealthy beyond measure. I looked at David, God at the man's own heart. I was reading a stat suggests that he was probably worth over $20 billion if you look at it in today's. So these guys weren't poor people. These God bless people. So I think that was the thing I had to learn. And I said, okay, Lord, it's not unholy to be wealthy now, but I know you don't want me to be wealthy for self-greed. You want me to be wealthy so I can continue to build your kingdom and build people in my community and go back and help people who are less fortunate or in economic despair. How do I help more Black people or people of color be able to win with money? So we're not dependent on the government. We're not dependent on a check. We're not dependent on, and we can really have financial freedom, because that's then going to give us the leverage to make any demands that we want. So that's what I think the Lord has been, the journey of wealth he's been kind of taking me on. And now when I talk to some of my colleagues in the not in ministry, but just in church circles, it's like, I challenge that now. Well, money's the root of evil, and I'm like, nah, that's not the Bible, man. It's the love of money. So it's different things. So that's my story.
I'll just take a short time to say I agree with Dr. Levy, because the last 2 suits I've bought, and my wife bought it. I haven't bought a suit since I think 1993 or something like that, or 1990. I mean, I think the last blazer I have, she bought it. The shirt I'm wearing, my wife bought it. I didn't buy it. That hat, a friend of mine bought it for my birthday. I'm cheap. I mean, I don't know. People say you're frugal. I mean, I think sometimes we have needs and we have wants, and sometimes our wants become needs. And one of the most important things I think people have to do is you have to differentiate between what a want and a need is. And then you have to be disciplined. It's not everything that comes down the pike you got to have. I mean, I'll say I had this phone for like a long time. It says Patriots on there, like 5 years. I just got a new phone. It's the iPhone 11 for work. But I get to write off the business expense. But the point is, I'm not going to buy a new car. I mean, I just won't. I'm funny like that. So I think people think that they have to change their lifestyle to create, to be debt free. All we're saying is that you have to realize that it's important. It's very important that you put yourself in a position so that when you need to do something, you have to make a capital purchase, you can do it. Most of the times, people are just spending money on just foolishness to keep up with the Joneses.
So real quick, right? And we only got maybe about 7 or 8 more minutes in this. And so if you do have a question, we're going to take some of the questions in the chat. But talk to us a little bit. One of the questions that came in was, is it better to have money in a retirement plan or in a savings account? I'll put it up. Better to have money in a retirement plan or in a savings account?
I want to jump at that one first.
All right.
Well, a savings account, I just told you I have a client, right, who has $160,000 and gets 0.8%. I have another client in Florida who has $103,000 in a money market, and they had like $89 worth of interest, for the year. I think it's foolishness. I believe in tax-free retirement. If you have a 401k, if you have a TSP, a 457, a 43B, you know what it is? You guys are ministers. You probably got 43Bs or 457s, right? The point is simply this. What you did was you said you went to a deal with the government, and the government said to you, you put up all the money, you handle all the overhead, you run the business, and in 30 years, I'll tell you how much you owe me. That's what you all did with a 401k and a 403B and a 457 and a TSP. What I say is you can do it tax-free. There's a book by Patrick Kelly called The Tax-Free Retirement. It teaches you concepts that people don't know about. I'm the non-traditional guy.
So which option?
I'm sorry?
Which option they said retirement fund or savings account?
I say a tax-free retirement, not savings. Use that savings. I would use that 168,000 and create it into millions for saving, for retirement, tax-free. That's what I would do.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Troy, I don't know. I'm not putting in a savings account. It depends. Well, let me say this. Depends on the need. Like if this is just an emergency savings fund that you need quick access to, you're not making money off it, you just need to be able to use it, same day you have something, you can keep it in a savings account. But if we're talking about generational wealth, right, you need to put it, that's a vehicle I would use. I would use what we call even a Roth 401k if they have it. And all Roth means is it's going to be you're not paying taxes on the growth and the money that's in there, right? So that's how I would potentially leverage it. But to answer your question, I'd lean towards a 401k if it's investment purposes. Retirement
is definitely a long-term game. This question is really a question about, short-term versus long-term savings or what have you. Retirement is the long game. The savings account, only thing I use my savings account for, and for Havis will probably disagree with this, I strictly use it for my emergency fund. I would never put $100,000 in there. I can tell you how much I have. I'm not going to, but what I have in mind is strictly shut up, Defoe.
Let me hold something, brother. Let me hold something.
emergency, if our health declines, or if one of us lose our job and we have to, or our boiler breaks or something on our car, which happens all the time to everyone. That's strictly what I use my savings account for, and that's strictly short term versus long term retirement. We have both, so
Gotcha.
And before you continue, this is a tip. It's a free tip for everybody's watching and everyone. If you have a TSP, a 401k, a 457 or 43B, and your company matches, you only contribute to what they match. It's free money. And after that, you use the rest that you can access tax-free. There's taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free. The best is tax-free. Tax deferred is the second best, and taxable is Uncle Sam got to get his.
And I think as I'm listening to this, and I'm probably in the situation that a lot of people are on and that are listening to this, what I hear from you all is that I need to sit down with someone who's smarter than me, who understands how money works, and I need to get some advice from them where I can also sue them if they steal my money, right?
Exactly. Of course.
I have to be able to be protected. If you steal my money, I'm going to come for you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Right?
You always have control over your own money, though.
That is true.
Be able to steal it.
Hey, Doc, you were saying you being a clinician. I mean, I'm opposed to sitting on the couch, but there are times you got to go sit on the couch. And if I need to talk to someone about what I need to do, I need to talk to you. If I'm having some mental challenges, or if I'm having some emotional or some anxiety, I should sit on your couch and talk to you and pay you. The same way with us and with me in what I do. I have to have I have like $2 million worth of insurance, which is called E&O, because I make a mistake. The point I'm trying to make here is simply this: seek someone that you trust who can give you the proper advice. And it's get multiple opinions. I'm not sitting here saying I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I like what Dr. Levy's saying. I like what Joseph is saying also. There's different things you can do, but make sure that whatever you do, you talk to a professional. Sometimes you need to do that.
And that professional needs to have a reasonable rationale for what they're saying as well. So awesome. Good stuff.
So two quick questions came in, and we're just going to go through these real quick. What are your views on distributing retirement funds among ETFs and dividend stocks? See, I don't even know what this means. I know I'm broke. Are these risks too high?
Well, Joseph, tell me what ETFs are and dividend stocks.
Well, I mean, so
I know what a dividend stock is.
These are just type of funds, right? So you think ETF, just think of, and I'm trying to make this as simple so I'm not confusing people. Dividend stocks are just stocks that pay back dividends, so you get money back. When I think long term, I'm thinking 401k. I just keep it simple. Like don't be too, and it also depends on your risk tolerance and where you are. But I'm keeping it simple. Invest in some good stock mutual funds that are diversified, right? You don't want to gamble too much with your future, right? Like putting your money in, one stock or an individual stock is too risky. So I'd keep it safe with, some mutual funds. There are some ETFs that are okay as long as it captures a breadth of different type of stocks. And then more importantly, you have to look at the prospectus. How has it done, right? So just make sure whatever fund you're investing in, and this is for the viewers, they do a really good job at telling you, how they've done over the last decade or 20 years or 30 years. So just spend a little time reading the prospectus. If you have no interest in that, talk to someone. They can walk you through, and you can be able to do that. But for me, I'm diversifying from big companies, small companies, mid companies, international companies. I'm kind of divvying it up, but I wouldn't recommend going individual stocks for retirement purposes. So
when you say diversification, that means spreading your money out over many different places.
Yes.
Yeah, and also, Doc, what happens to a lot of people at times, a lot of people may have like a retirement account, or they want to start doing something. One of the simplest ways you can start, if you're going to do it, and I'm not licensed to give you advice on securities anymore, but I'll preface it by saying this. The safest way you can start is mutual funds. Buy some no-load mutual funds. Companies like Vanguard and companies like that can help you, and you can diversify. You have a blend. You have small caps, large caps, things like that. And values funds. But if someone wants to do that, but make sure you talk to someone who's licensed and can give you that advice. I mean, I know that stuff and I used to do it. I no longer do it, but I always tell people, talk to someone, make sure they have a license. Don't let them do a Madoff on you.
Gotcha. Troy, start with this one, man. Is it that we should not put our money in the bank? And also, is it wrong to use your savings to invest in higher education than assets while you're young?
Great question. So I'll attack that first one. No, it's not wrong to put your money in the bank. Just understand that putting your money in the bank isn't a long-term plan, right? So long-term for me would be mutual funds. I haven't invested in anything or long-term invested in anything besides mutual funds at this point. Some people do single stock. I wouldn't necessarily recommend single stock for long-term like retirement. But putting money in your bank is just strictly if you're doing a checking account, you're taking care of day-to-day things. If you're talking about a savings account, for me, that is only for my emergency fund, so I could have really quick access. And that, I don't have more than 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in savings accounts. That's about it. Once I get above that threshold, that is going into long-term savings. That second question there, is it wrong to use your savings to invest in higher education and assets while you're young? No, not wrong at all. The best thing that you can invest in is in yourself. So for higher education, of course you want to, study something that makes sense financially, where you would be able to receive that return on investment ROI on school, unless you're getting scholarships or what have you. I love knowledge. I love to learn. If I could just be a full-time student for the rest of my life, I probably would. But of course, I have to make money to support my family. And so if you're just paying for school just to do it, and you're coming out of pocket to do it, and no real return on investment, I wouldn't do that. I certainly wouldn't do that. But investing in assets while you're young, look, great thing also. But the first thing that I would invest in before assets is in myself. Once I'm finished investing in myself, then I would invest in assets and so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
One of the things people can start doing is reading. Do some reading, do some research. Too many times if somebody tells you something, you just believe it. Do a little research. And also, when we talk about the educational thing, going back to my song and dance, I keep telling people, if a kid is smart enough to have, scholarships or, hey, more power to it, but everyone's not like that. Some people may have to finance it. But if your child, everyone, and I'm not picking on Joseph because I love him dearly, everyone who has a social security number should be doing what I say. As a matter of fact, if you all plan to have other children, because my children are adults, from the time they're 2 weeks old and you get that social security number, make sure they have something that's through insurance that they can access educationally. And all kids may not go to college. So one may learn a trade, a mechanic, HVAC. Those are great careers. Electrician, great careers. It doesn't mean they have to get a bachelor's degree and become, I don't know, a liberal arts major or whatever it is. All I'm saying to folks is that, sit down with someone who can help you. I'm not opposed to 5 to 9 college savings plans, but those are especially earmarked for education. What if your kid wants to go to the Army or go do something else? They don't want to do something on the educational path. What you're going to do? Make sure you have the funds generated in the proper structure so that if they don't go that route, you can still use it for what they need it for.
I know you got to probably go to the next question, Defoe. All I want to say is just double down, invest in yourself in the beginning. That's more important because you're what's going to make your money. Like you are the asset, the most important asset. So, and it may not be school. I mean, I don't know what it could be, a trade school, it could be whatever it is, and not necessarily it couldn't be investing money, it could be investing time. But I think to the question is assets in the beginning of your life. I'll spend a lot more investing in yourself.
Gotcha. I want to throw up this last one from the audience, and then I want us to tackle this one last question that we had on our list prior. But what books do you recommend? Like everybody recommends someone or something to someone who may want to expand their financial knowledge as to something to read.
I'll give two books. One I said Patrick Kelly is The Tax-Free Retirement. It's a very simple book that talks about the concept that I talk about. And the second one is by a guy named Douglas Eze, E-Z-E, Creating Generational Wealth. He's based in Maryland, actually. He's one of my colleagues. I'll get you a copy of that book, Doc. Dr. Defoe, I'll get you a copy of the books. I'll mail both. I'll get you 2 copies.
Who's the author?
Douglas Eze. Eze.
Like is an Easy E the Raptor?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Nigerian name, so you say Eze. I think you say Eze. It's called, and his book is an awesome book, and also Patrick Kelly, Tax-Free Retirement.
What was the name of the book? I'm just putting it in the comments.
Creating Generational Wealth.
Okay. Joseph, anything you got to?
Yeah, a book changed my life, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It just helped me rethink the importance of assets versus liabilities. Another one is The Millionaire Next Door, which I thought it really talked to people who are building wealth. What does that millionaire look like, right? Not flossing. These are people who are doing it the right way.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the second one was?
The Millionaire Next Door.
All right, Troy, any recommendations?
Yeah, sure. I read one a few years ago called The Jewish Phenomenon. It talks about Jewish people, not necessarily religious Jews, but it could be religious Jews, but ethnic Jews, and how they approach finances and just everything from how they select careers, how they come together as a community, how they spend money. That was a very good book to help in that regard.
All right. And so this is the last one, and then I think we've run out of time. I can't seem to make all of my ends meet, and I want to be faithful to God, right? How do I afford my bills, my expenses, and tithe and offering?
Okay, I don't mind.
Troy go last because
okay.
I'll go first. Let the pastor go last. It doesn't matter, like I said, if you make $5 or if you're making $1 million. First of all, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1:1, right? Everything belongs to God. So if you believe that, you got to return a faithful tithe and then a liberal offering. So what I tell people, it doesn't matter how much you make. What does it say in Malachi? He says, try him, and you will see. The important thing is that I think sometimes what happens to people, they say, well, let me pay my this and that, and I'll come back to God. You got to trust God. I asked God, when I started doing my show, Chooses with Terrence, I asked God to, the prayer of Jabez in 2 Chronicles, I think it was, expand my territory, and sometimes be careful what you ask for because God will give it to you at times. I was in 4 states, now I'm in 16 and growing. God will give it. All you have to do is make sure you return it to him first, and then he will continue to bless you. You got to believe that, though.
Yeah. I want to be careful I say this because I got 2 pastors on here. So,
the second one.
Let me say this the right way. Look, first off, you have a relationship with the Lord, right? And I think that's important. So what your giving patterns is a conviction between you and God. You have something that if you don't give, you can start giving. My personal philosophy is God asked for 10%, right? That's his mandate. Return, that's what tithe is. I always saw offering as the surplus. Me personally, if you're swallowed in debt and you can't make ends meet, I'm not guilting you to also give a liberal offering, right? I trust God with your tithe, get out of debt. That doesn't mean splurge on other things, buying ice cream Jordans, whatever that case is. I'm paying tithe, knocking down my debt, and I'm encouraging folk to say, as you start to get more air, you start to give more offering. And I've noticed, like for me now, I feel like I'm able to give more because I'm more free, right? So that's my philosophy. If you can't make ends meet, trust God with the 10%. Let that be the first thing you take off because it's a mental thing. you don't have to rush into paying the liberal offering. That'll come in time. Free yourself up, and then start to build your offering as you go.
Sure.
Okay, my pastor.
Let me just say that when my wife and I were, set ourselves to get out of debt several years ago, of course, we had always been given a faithful tithe. But years before that, we were convicted to give, a certain percentage for offering. It was 10% for offering. And, we prayed about that. We came together and we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. Now, fast forward a few years after that, it came time for us to, buckle down and get out of debt. We still live by that conviction, okay, that we never second guess that conviction, that we would give that percentage towards offering. Now, let me say that, that doesn't necessarily have to be a blueprint for what everyone else does. If God hasn't necessarily convicted you on a certain percent, or you haven't decided between you and the Lord, I'm not here to mess with anyone's offering. If you give $1 in offering, and that's between you and the Lord. Now, tithe, God has, set a certain percentage. But, if you don't, or come down on offering or what have you, that's between you and the Lord. But you need to live by your personal convictions. Now, I don't have any regrets of, returning a faithful offering or, that same percentage of offering during the time that we were getting out of debt. Could we have used that money to get out of debt quicker? Well, sure, maybe. But we don't know the unknowns in that situation. Did the Lord bless in that situation to, expedite our debt payoff? Maybe he did. I don't know. But all we know is that we had convictions and we stuck by those convictions. That was between us and the Lord.
Yeah. I think that's very important. No one has ever had less by giving God more.
That's right.
And so if you are struggling with that, then just out of your love relationship with God, you work that out. But listen, I want to thank all of you for coming on and for this very spirited discussion. Make sure if you watch this that you share it with someone else. And I just want to give you all 15 seconds to just give a last word to people, to what you want them to know. And then I want you to make sure that you also let people know, if they need to get in contact with you, how they can get in contact with you. Havis, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Troy, and then we'll end with Joseph.
Okay, sure. Guys, talk to a professional, a licensed person who can give you the right advice. I think it's very important. As I said, solidify that foundation. Please do that. And my name is Havis Bardouille with Bardouille Financial Services. You can send me an email at Bardouille, Bardouille, financial services @gmail.com. My office number is 434-535-6099. And my cell phone is area code 864-607-1361. I'd be happy to hear from you if you have any questions for me.
Great. Thank you. So, if you want someone to walk with you that has been there, like I said, my wife and I, we got out of debt, and, we did this, we grinded, we, did what we had to do, lowered our expenses and increased what we were paying towards debt. We've actually gone through this. It's not pie in the sky. We have done this, and I'm willing to walk with you to eliminate debt once and for all from your life. Hit me up at TroySLevy.com, Troy S as in Solomon, Levy.com, or you can DM me on IG, on Instagram, and that's at Troy Solomon Levy. Make sure that you do that.
Now, Joseph, before you start, right, because we know what you're going to say, but before you start, let people know also about your foundation, and if they want to partner with you in what you are doing, give them sort of a snapshot about what your foundation does.
Sure. So for me, Nyamwange.org, it's a long NYAMWANG.org. The premise of our foundation is really just empowering urban environments one child at a time. And we do that through scholarships. We promote a birthright trip where we sponsor kids to go to Africa to learn more about their history. And we do a lot of community service work. That's a big part of it. Financial literacy is also a big component. And so we're launching out some development training, which we partner with Troy and a couple others to teach kids about advocacy and also how to be financially literate. So, that's so many things that we're doing. I encourage you to participate, or at least if you have any interest in joining, again, www.nyamwange.org. Nyamwange.org. That's the foundation. The one part I do want to say, though, on top of that, is this is all about financial freedom. And I think, especially in our community, one of the things that's really gripping us and is we're being locked in and sucked in is financial freedom. I'm telling you, I've been on the other side where I was swarmed in debt. I'm in a much better position. It's different on the other side, guys. I'm telling you, when you have financial freedom and you have invested in assets that are paying you and you don't have to worry about it, you are more empowered, you have more leverage, you can speak your mind, you can call things out that are wrong. There's a level of confidence that's provided. So it's not a sin. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. And it's something I'm trying to build towards. And that's my encouragement to you guys. Get your financial house in order. It's not just about making money. It's about going back and helping the community, making a difference, making people life. And that's my life's work. It's going back and helping others.
So listen, I want to thank you all for coming on. And then I also want to thank our viewing audience. Let me just share some things with you all that are coming up down the pipe. First off, this Saturday, we are having our part 2 of our men's conversation. I'm the Man, a conversation on authentic masculinity. There's so much going on right now in the world. We have three, very thought-provoking brothers that are coming on. Uncle Ronnie Vanderhorst, Corey Johnson, and Jamie Pottinger will be discussing what authentic masculinity looks like. And then we are also continuing on next Sunday, our Sunday conversations. We have the Bishop of Capitol Hill coming, Brenda and Emil Peeler, to come and join with us for Sunday conversations. And then, of course, we have this very special singles conversation that we're going to have on June 13th. At 4 o'clock, all of our singles will be getting together. My brother, Nick Talaferro, will be spearheading that discussion with all of our singles. Listen, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for joining with us. And for our online audience, we also want to thank you as well. You all have a wonderful day.